Welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Whether you're a longtime listener or first time, 5-star reviews are lovely. And I just might read yours on the air. How about that? A lot of big things happening. One of the biggest is I have a book coming out. It's titled That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, and it's going to be published by Bombardier Books, Post Hill Press. So that's coming out later this year. To stay up on release dates and all that, please check out my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And you can also join my community at thelouperez.locals.com. If you haven't been on Locals yet, if you join up, you get to listen to my podcast early. You'll get to watch my sketch comedy early. And also you have access to exclusive content and me. If you're looking for other ways that you can support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. If you're into CBD products, please check out palomaverdecbd.com. And if you use promo code LOU, you'll get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you're into cold brew, check out Black Organic Cold Brew. www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code LOU for free shipping. All right, I think that's about it. Let's go. My name is Lou Perez. I'm very happy to be joined by my next guest. She is the editor-in-chief of the Post Millennial. Please welcome Libby Emmons.
Hey, Lou. How's it going?
Good. I kind of waited there as if there was like a live audience. I was just going to start.
I did too. I was like, are we going to get applause?
I know. It feels like a show. It feels like we're
Right.
we're doing something right now.
Right.
Well, first thing I want to point out, so we do audio, we do video. For those who have audio, you have no idea what's happening on the screen. But for those with the video, you can see that both me and Libby, in our backgrounds, we have books. We got
That
books,
means we're smart. It's
right?
Yes.
Or
for.
or we're problematic. Do you remember? I remember it was a couple of years ago. People were like analyzing the books on the bookshelves of people being interviewed, and it's like, as if that says anything about somebody, you know. I mean,
it does. It does, though, right? Like I remember being a kid, and I would go over to people's houses. My friends' houses, not like just random people. I'd go for my friends' houses. And what I was always interested in was what records they had. Like what records, and if I may date myself, what cassettes they had, right? Because we had a lot of cassettes, and interested in what books they had. So, I think it still says something about you.
Well, the ones behind me. So I moved into this house, and I'm very lucky to be able to have a home office, although it took me like 6 or 7 months to actually set it up. So now I have like bookcases, and they're super cheap bookcases. So I'm kind of amazed that they're still standing. So behind me are 2 bookcases filled with books that I haven't read, right?
Okay.
So don't judge me by these books because I haven't read them yet. But then over here, these are all the books that I have read.
All those shiny books with broken spines and everything. It's very exciting.
Yeah. And notes. Like I'm a big note taker in books. So I'll look back at a book and be like, oh, I just put exclamation points in the margin. Like nothing more. I guess it popped out to me. I wonder if there's a point.
I would do things like where I would like circle a page number, right? And then I would go back through and see that I had circled page numbers. And I don't know what the hell why did I circle this page number? I couldn't just bracket something. What's the problem? Why?
Why?
I don't know.
I'm wondering if there's a point where you can no longer say that you read a book because you don't remember anything in the book, because that's what like these shelves are. They're full of books that I don't remember reading. So I might as well, it's like, I might as well have not read them. Or am I lying if somebody asks me, oh, did you read this book?
No, you still definitely read the book. It's just that the book did not retain any sort of permanent attention span. But also it likely, if it was a book that you enjoyed, it likely influenced other things. So you are still the person who has read that book.
Got it. Do you get to read?
I have not been doing a lot of reading lately. I tend to do reading when I like a lot of the books that I read, I sort of have to read, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I recently read a whole bunch of Jim Jordan's new book because I did an interview with Jim Jordan, the
The
congressman.
the
The
congressman, the
congressman. Yeah.
wrestling guy.
Yeah, he was a wrestling guy. I think he's actually a pretty good congressman. I think he's an interesting fella. Anyway, I read a bunch of his book prior to interviewing him, in part about his book, and I was also interested in talking to him about how he was kicked off the January 6th committee, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, so I tend to read a lot more books like that. Lately, I'm reading the biography of John Adams, though, with my son.
How'd you get that interview? You snagged that interview.
John Adams? The John Adams? Yeah, I know. I had to go back in time. I had to get into my time machine. I had to break a whole bunch of rules, prime directive, things like that, head back in time. But the John Adams book that's been really fun. My son was interested in the revolution, and I thought this is a good way to get involved in that through like the eyes of one guy. We also we saw Hamilton and we liked that. So I thought, here's another guy. He was briefly mentioned in Hamilton. So yeah, so that's been fun. But I used to write plays, and I would spend so much of my time writing plays and less time reading. And then in the summer, I would kind of consume as many books as I could. And so I started doing this thing where I'd get obsessed with one author, or even, for a while I would do a thing where I was reading all the books from authors in a certain country.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so that was fun. One summer I read all of E.M. Forster. So I don't know one E.M. Forster from another, but I'm very familiar with E.M. Forster. I could pick it out, that's obviously E.M. Forster. Willa Cather, I did that. I just sort of read all of Willa Cather shortly after.
Wait, did she write Paul's Case, Willa Cather?
Yeah. Actually, that's one that I recently picked up in a little slim volume I haven't read.
I'm not gonna spoil anything for you, but it's an amazing short story. It's really, it's great. Actually, when I was going for my MFA, one of our assignments in one of my workshops was to write either a parody or an homage. So I ended up writing a story, an homage to Willa Cather's Paul's Case, and my story was called Paul's Ghost.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's a short, I think PBS movie version with Eric Roberts where he plays Paul. It's a great short story. I don't get to geek out on literature every so often, so it's cool.
Yeah, me neither. Because I end up doing all this politics. What was your MFA? I have an MFA also.
Creative writing.
Oh, no way. Mine was playwriting. So
all right. Where'd you go?
Similar.
Where'd you go for your MFA?
Columbia.
Oh boy, I did not get into Columbia. Thank God.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
I actually got into Columbia because I was taking a writing workshop downtown at this little theater company with this professor, Eduardo Machado, who's this amazing writer and a really terrific guy. And he was like, well, he's standing outside smoking these little cigarillos that he did. He's Cuban. And he was like, so Libby, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I don't know. What should I do now? He goes, you come study with me at Columbia. And I was like, okay, well, we'll do that. That sounds good. So I got a bunch of money and fellowships and stuff, and he hooked it all up. And that's amazing. What I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't get in anywhere else. I have to say, both my degrees, I didn't get in. Both the degrees that the schools I went to, I literally did not get in any place else.
No safety schools.
No, I tried. I just didn't get in. I didn't get into Brooklyn College. I didn't get into NYU. I didn't get into UMass.
Yeah.
Where else did I not get into? I got waitlisted at Hampshire for college, and I was just like, this is insulting. Hampshire waitlisted. So
when I said thank God I didn't get into Columbia, it's because I would not have been, I wouldn't have gotten any fellowships or money like that. So I would have basically graduated, with an MFA and a shit ton of debt, whereas I went to City College, which
Oh,
was
nice.
which is much cheaper. I don't know. Is City College more uptown than Columbia or down? Or
It's more uptown than Columbia.
It is. Yeah.
Columbia is on 116.
Right. Yeah. We were up in was it
You're like on
147?
2 something. Oh, nice. Okay.
137th and Convent Avenue or something like that.
Okay.
I forget, but I had a great time. I did 3 years because I was going, I guess, like semi part time, and I don't know what your experience was like, because I was studying fiction, and the amount of work that you put into a short story, right? Like you could be writing this short story, working on it for months and months and months, and then you send it out to all of these literary journals, and you wait months and months and months to find out whether or not it's been accepted or not. And then a lot of them, a lot of literary journals, they ask you like, don't send this out to everybody.
Right. And then you just put the story on hold. You can't do anything with it because you sent it to like, the Ohio Journal or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And then and so then so you're waiting to get in. Most of the time you don't get in. But if you do happen to get into a literary journal, it's like, yeah, this is amazing. And they'll pay you like $25. Yeah. And if they pay money, you're lucky if they pay you $25. They normally pay you in copies of the journal. And then you look at the circulation and you're like, oh, they have a circulation of like 1,000. And you're like, okay, now out of that 1,000, how many people are even going to read my story? So I was sort of, I was navigating that world while at the same time performing comedy. And then at the time when me and my comedy partner Greg, our channel Greg and Lou on YouTube was getting like millions and millions of views. So it was sort of like these two worlds of, I'm going to be like either an esoteric literary fiction writer while at the same time being I guess a more popular online comedian.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting thing because it shows how the entertainment art forms are really changing. Who sits down to read short stories anymore? I love reading. I love short stories, but mostly I read old collections. Most of my books are 20th century books. I don't even have that many 21st century books. And the ones I do, as I said, they're like contemporary, political, blah, 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 Yeah, so I think that's really a change. When I was doing theater, it was very similar. You'd send out a play. You'd send out a full-length play. You'd hope that somebody was going to do a reading of it in like some theater in Las Vegas. And maybe they would. And maybe they would send you $100. And maybe they wouldn't. And maybe, sometimes what really would kill me is they would reject the project. They would reject the play and send me back a bunch of notes. And a couple of times I replied with, if I make these changes, are you going to produce the play?
Right.
Because if so, like, sure, let's talk about it. Let's get in the room. I'll see if I can make the changes and you'll produce the play. But no, it wouldn't be like, make these changes and we'll produce the play. It would be like, make these changes to make it conform to what we think is a good play. And we still aren't going to do your play. And it's like, that's totally, totally pointless. But yeah, it would be like, send a play. And even if they do the play, they send you maybe $50, and you're like, okay, that's great. Like, and they'd say things like, are you going to fly out? And it's like, yeah, I'm totally going to spend $600 to come out there. I'm going to find some friend that I haven't talked to in 5 years and crash on their couch to come see this play you just gave me $50 for. I'm not even invited to rehearsals. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
Why is this a thing? But I did have some really great experiences in theater.
Nice.
And I loved making theater. But now it's interesting too, because it's like I'll have an idea for an article, and maybe I'll talk to the other editors at Post Millennial about it and say, what do you think of this? Usually though, I just write it and then I say, guys, let's workshop this headline, and somebody edit it and publish it. So it's like from idea to publication, a couple hours.
Yeah, and then getting that immediate audience response too, whether you've tweeted it out or people come to the actual site, and there's I guess something that I got over very quickly is sort of the ego that goes into being a I'm a
Right.
fiction
That's a big
write.
part of it. That's a big part of
It's like
it.
what an ego
Yeah.
when you don't even have
Yeah.
anyone reading your shit. Like no
Yeah.
one's interested in your shit. And like, you know, the amount of times that there would be readings either on campus and you'd go and you're like, this okay, we have this writer, he's reading 40 pages and he sucks.
my
Like
God,
he
I
can't even
know.
fucking read. Like what
And it
is
would
going
take
on here?
forever. And you just be
Forever.
sitting there like, how is this not an open bar? Like this needs to be an open
Yeah.
bar, and
Yeah.
everything needs to be 100 times shorter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
one
think
thing I still struggle with is like I want articles to be shorter and punchier.
Mhm.
And like I'll come in with like 900 words and it's like, can you get this down? And 900 is still nothing. It's like no
Right.
words at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just thinking like my wife and I we have our two young ones. They're two under 2. And I'm trying to think like the amount of time like I'm always reading online, you know. And part of me wishes that part of me wishes I was the kind of weirdo who would like print out everything I read online and then put it on shelves so people know that I'm constantly reading. But I don't have, you know, but I have hardly any time to
Just
you know,
tweet it and then everyone
yeah.
will know.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
read this.
I
I read this. Take notes.
This is not an endorsement. This is simply to add to the numbers that I've
To
been putting out.
announce that I have read this.
Right. But you know, when it comes to you know, precious time that you want to fill with reading stuff, you know, they're just the reality is like there are just so many books out there that I don't have enough of a life to read. And what I find funny is when we're, you know, getting into like, you know, I guess culture wars where people are sort of saying, hey, you remove all these great pieces of literature that have been read for hundreds of years, knock that shit off your shelf, don't read that, but read this author who just happens to be a part of a, you know, a minority group. You need to insert that person onto your bookshelf and onto your to read list. And it's like, man, you guys can't guilt me into reading your shit. Like that's not going to happen, man.
Especially because like almost anything that comes out of a graduate program, you know, it sucks. Like it sucks.
Right.
It's long and it's self-indulgent and it's very obsessed with the author themselves. And it's really just not that interesting. I've been thinking about it recently because I think Shakespeare is, you know, soon to be in the dust heap other than references and films that are too dark and the lighting is bad and no one can really understand what they're saying. Pretty sure that that's, you know, on the way. And I was thinking about how many other authors disappear over time. And how many authors just are very popular in the time that they're writing, and then they're just relegated to the dust heap and gone. And I think that it's interesting that in this time period, and I wonder if this has previously happened or if this is unique to us, now we have this social justice component to what you should be reading. What were some of the previous rules? You know, I wonder what those were. People tried to trash Oscar Wilde in his time and to get rid of him. And all it took was like 100 years or more. When was Oscar Wilde writing? I don't even remember. But he had so many great plays, right? His Salome is unbelievable. Is that him, Salome? Am I thinking of the right thing?
I don't know.
What am I thinking of?
All I know with Oscar Wilde is
it's not Salome.
Dorian Gray. That's all.
Dorian Gray is great.
Algernon, being earnest.
One.
Being earnest.
Yeah, being earnest. What is the Salome I'm thinking of?
And not to be confused with the
I'm
comedy
clearly not
series.
reading enough anymore. Yeah.
The comedy series Ernest Goes to Jail. Ernest
totally
Scared
different.
Stupid. Not that. Yeah, that's
totally different.
Ernest and Ernst.
Yeah. I think I'm actually thinking of Aubrey Beardsley drawings that may have been in a book. No, it's Salome. I'm pretty sure it's on my shelf right there.
Right now, there's somebody listening to this, and you were angering them so much.
Right, I'm pissing them off. I actually stole the book from my high school library, and my mother was infuriated because it has original drawings from Aubrey Beardsley in it.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Man, what kind of high school did you go to?
I went to a very nice private school, of course. I'm
Here
that person.
we wipe our ass with Beardsley.
Yeah.
It
No, it
flows
wasn't
like
original.
toilet
It was
paper.
like, there just weren't that many printings of it.
Ah,
I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, but I'm
yeah.
pretty sure Oscar Wilde, Salome, and I have this book, and I like it. I like the book.
Well, even with Shakespeare, I'm just thinking about uh, the amount of remakes that are constantly coming out, and they're all Macbeth. Like
They're all Macbeth.
the amount of times we're going to keep seeing Macbeth, and
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, Macbeth is
it's
great.
a great show.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic. I love the witches. I saw Macbeth at BAM with Sir Patrick Stewart. He played Macbeth. He was
Jean-Luc
fantastic.
Picard. I've always
Yeah,
wanted to see Jean-Luc Picard play
yeah.
Shakespeare.
He was great.
Yeah.
He looked exactly like Jean-Luc Picard.
Of course.
Exactly like him. They didn't make any effort. He was still wearing the Star Trek uniform.
I would believe that. He had the communicator just in case he needed to call for line.
Yeah. So they, let's see. I saw that version of Macbeth. I think there's a new version of Macbeth that's coming out. So even when it comes to Shakespeare,
There is. Yeah.
it's like it's like his other works are sort of still, are kind of being forgotten about, and like the main one, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. These are the ones that are going to, be the most remembered.
Maybe Othello will stick around because it's racist and stuff.
Yeah.
People kind of like messing with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the worst things I'm trying to think about. I knew a girl who she was doing stand-up comedy, and she did my show that I hosted out in LA, and then she would be very supportive at the open mics too, and was coming like every week. So you try to build a community, and you want to help people out. So she was in a production of Shakespeare. God, what was it? It's like it's not one of his well-known ones, but it was a Shakespeare production. I was like, oh, cool. I'll come and support. And so my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, we both went. And what ensued was like one of the worst fucking plays I've ever seen in my life. It was so bad. And we sat like to make it to the exit, you would have to walk across the stage. So there was no.
You sat on the wrong side of the like round or whatever. No, Shakespeare can be transcendent in either way. It can be either transcendently amazing, or it can be transcendently awful. It's very rare that you see like a meh Shakespeare play. It's either great or it's just abysmal. There's
what
no
are we
way
doing
around it.
here? I was in so that one we definitely left during intermission. It was like, thank God they're doing intermission. So we got the fuck out of there. I never brought it up to her. She never brought it up to me, the actress. And I think,
that's nice. Some people get mad when you leave at intermission, and they just like, they'll never forgive you. I know somebody who had this friend, and actually the friend never forgave him for leaving at intermission.
Wow.
But this was a play that was like 4 hours long. It had 2 intermissions. I mean, come on. They left at the second one,
Yeah.
If you got a second intermission, that's like an invitation to depart.
Yeah, definitely. I was in a college production of King Lear, and that was one where I think I was kind of like doing people a favor, because I was in like another play with them, and then they were putting this thing on, and they just went about producing this thing just all wrong. For one, they did King Lear with college kids, and I think it felt like it was like 3.5 hours long, and rather than doing it on campus where you could get an audience and you wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to travel, they decided to let's rent out like a black box theater on Theater Row in Midtown Manhattan. And my dad and my mom came to see one of the performances, and my dad, his English is his second language, and like this poor man had to sit through 3.5 hours of poorly acted King Lear, and the only thing that he remembered, or the only thing that he brought up at the end when I talked to him, is there was this one actor. He was a boy, but he had like one tit, and this wasn't like a costume thing. It was like just anatomically, he was a boy with a breast, and
Weird.
and he was wearing like a loincloth because that was kind of the we did it as a period piece. And rather than put the loincloth so it covered his tit, it covered his normal pec. And that just, I guess that's what my dad was looking at and thinking about for 3.5 hours while we were speaking this, Shakespearean English that he has no fucking clue what we're saying.
I remember going to see a play with a friend of mine and he was naked the whole time. And, we were friends. We weren't that kind of friends, we definitely weren't that kind of friends. And I kind of couldn't handle how many naked people there were in the play. Right. I'm probably just not that sophisticated to handle that many naked people in the play. Like I'm not great at strip clubs, and I definitely wasn't great at this play. And afterwards, like I just couldn't, we were going for drinks and I was like, I can't, all I can see is you naked now. Like that's all right. I got. There was a whole lot of flopping around. It was too much. It's just too much. But you talk about these midtown theaters. Also, the other problem was these are the theaters that have like just a ton of black drapery. And it's like the drapery has never been cleaned. You don't want to brush up against it. You don't know what's in there. There's fleas, there's bed bugs, there's something you don't want on you or on your costume. These dressing rooms are horrible. And nobody wants to go to these theaters.
Dead dreams. There's so many dead dreams.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
I think I'm sure that I have left some dead dreams in theaters like that myself. You brush up against the curtain, suddenly you're filthy. No one can remember anything, right? No one can remember their lines. The lights never come on properly. It's hard to get audiences in those spaces. They're 3 floors up, and it's a walk up. So you got to get people to come up. You tell them they can't drink in the theater. And it's like, are you kidding me? That's the only thing I want to do in this space.
I want to, I'm performing and I want to drink. I want to be drunk performing. Yeah.
I mean, the downtown theaters I love the downtown theaters, but those midtown theaters, really, you could almost do a film about them, except they're so downtrodden and sad, those spaces. With the theater festivals where you pay $25 to get them to read your 5-minute play, and then they put it on, but you have to put it on. And so someone from Peoria comes in with their whole production cast, and they think that it's going to be their big break, and nobody comes, and it's terrible. My God, the nightmare of the midtown theater space.
You're bringing back just so many memories of me being being guilted into going to a one-woman show, and I'm like,
sweet Mary. Do you ever see the one where the lady marries herself? Did you ever see this one?
No.
So, oh my God, right? One-woman show, of course. This woman, late 30s, hasn't had a date in 5 years. And so she's decided that she's going to marry her. She's going to be a partner to herself. And it's very empowering and also just really horribly sad. Yeah. If you're going to marry yourself, that's a ceremony you shouldn't invite people to. It should be private. And then you should go on a cruise or something, a singles cruise.
Yeah. It would make it sadder. It would make it sadder if she was naked the whole time.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And it's just, this is me. This is who I am. I accept you made me think about when you were describing the naked actor and all that. I can handle nudity, but it depends on the angle. If they're rolling around and I'm seeing taint, it's no, that's just, there's just nothing attractive about that whatsoever.
And your viewers may not know, but this is something that happens.
Yeah.
This definitely happens. And there'll be dirt because it's earthy and it's, natural. And the worst part too about the naked plays is when you see the bottom of somebody's feet and they're just blackened from the filth on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Horror, just horror. I've stage managed shows like this because I used to do everything in theater, right? I was like an indie theater artist. And, I could hang your light grid right now if you really needed me to. And, this stuff was just atrocious. There'd be nails in the floor. Terrible.
Yeah. Did you ever see Sleep No More? Did you ever go to that production?
No, I never went to that. That was as I was on the tail end on my way out of theater. But interestingly, I've been to experimental theater projects similar to that. That one was like a big commercial experimental theater project
Yeah.
where you like walk through the space. But this theater company in New York called Woodshed Theater Company, I don't know if they're still doing stuff. But they were sort of like the intellectual, sophisticated version of Sleep No More, if you can even imagine something more than that. But I loved their stuff. They did something like that on a boat downtown on this big barge. They had this abandoned mansion uptown that had that, and you could just like wander around as the show was happening.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, I wrote a big paper about a theater performance like that. And then every time, like, then finally when those things started happening, I was like, fuck, man, I totally, excuse my language.
No, don't go for it.
I wrote this show. Like, I wrote these shows, except mine had a whole bunch of modern art in it, whatever. It was even more dorky than what I had eventually thought. But you were saying Sleep No More.
Yeah,
it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. So Sleep No More, when I think so Sleep No More came out when you were sort of getting out of that scene. Sleep No More came out when I was getting out of my previous relationship. So
Ooh.
I to tell you, you look back, I look back and I'm like, did I like Sleep No More? And it's like, yeah, you did, Lou, because you went 3 times. You went to this immersive theatrical production 3 times. The first time you went with your buddy named Dan. The second time you went with your then girlfriend, who you would later break up with, or you would break up with one another. And then the third time you went solo to explore, the thing. And then I spent New Year's Eve there by myself. I didn't do the show, but there was like an after party. So yeah,
you should have done
Sleep No
like
More.
one man show when you married yourself at the Sleep No More.
At the Sleep No More.
Yeah. Did you get stoned when you went to these things? Because I went to the Woodshed shows a bunch of times because I like those kids and I thought they were doing good stuff. But usually the second time I would get stoned first.
Yeah. I'll tell you the worst show that I ever did. That I went to. It was a show called Gatz, Gatz, where they read live and performed The Great Gatsby. So it was like,
I think I heard about this.
It was like an 8 or 9 hour show. I think it was in Princeton where it was. Fucking don't do it. It just awful. I had tickets to this thing and I was so excited about it that I had actually booked a gig, but it fell on the same day. And I told the gig, I'm like, I can't do it because I have tickets to this production. How stupid!
That's insane.
So
That's
stupid.
Crazy. Well, yeah, I would have.
I was getting out of my relationship, so
yeah, I tend to cancel anything for a gig.
Oh God, I
mean, but now I like my gigs way better because there'll be something like, "Hey, do you want to come to Phoenix for a couple of days and do something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what are we doing? Sign me up. I'm on the plane. Let's go." They're not gonna. It's more fun getting to go do stuff.
Yeah, they're not going to tell you, hey, Libby, we're going to read The Great Gatsby out loud. It's going to take about 8 to 9 hours, and you're going to fall asleep about halfway through, and you sleep and you kind of snore, and the fucking actors on stage are going to stare at you until they wake you up. I actually think I was woken up.
Did that happen?
By the actors staring at me. And then fortunately there was another like old guy, like an elderly dude, just rose over who was also just fucking passed out, sleeping, embarrassing his wife. But yeah, and it was like, look, I know it's been a while, but there was nothing that they did on stage that necessarily made sense that had anything to do with the story. It was like, oh, let's get a cast of people working in their shitty jobs and in an office, and then we're just gonna start reading this out loud, and then at some point the book goes away, so they've all memorized the book, which is interesting. That's a great feat.
Tough.
It's tough,
but
I don't have to watch it.
And who knows why it's necessary? There's always this point in a theater show that sucks where you can feel that you're going to fall asleep. Like you can feel it. And there's nothing you can do. Like your eyes are definitely closing. There's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter if you dig your fingernails into your thigh. It doesn't matter if you bite the inside of your mouth. And I've tried all the things, right? Because I went to so many bad shows. there's more bad shows than good shows. And when there's a good show, it's worth having gone. It's almost worth having gone to all the bad shows.
Almost.
almost, not quite. But when you have that feeling that you're going to fall asleep, a few years ago, I took my friend to Peter Brooks was in town. He had done this whole thing, and she was like, "Oh, I love Peter Brooks." It was awful. I mean, the man is old. There was nothing innovative. It was horrible. A lot of talking about toilet paper. That's mostly all I remember. But you have to let yourself fall asleep and just hope. Keep in your brain as you're falling asleep. Don't be asleep for too long. And if you can get like sort of 5 minutes of just with your eyes closed, you can make it through the rest of the show. This is what I've learned.
Sleep no more.
Right. There's an interesting thing though, which is that this form of entertainment, theater, has been with us since kind of the beginning of time, right? I mean, people telling stories about the hunt around a fire, like this is theater, drawing pictures on cave walls and telling a story. That's theatrical. That's what theater is. Just going back forever, the Greeks, everybody, all the cultures have performative storytelling art forms. And now what theater is, it's definitely like second to, third, fourth, fifth to TV, films, TikTok, YouTube, anything else that's going on. Theater is not as interesting as those forms. And instead of trying to become something new, instead of embracing a new idea or trying to create theater that does whatever the thing is that only theater can do, you know what I mean? Theater has taken on this idea that it's going to be an archaic art form only for the super intellectuals, only for the extra coastal sophisticates. So when you go to these shows, first what you're doing is congratulating yourself for having gone to the theater at all, That's what you're doing.
You spell it, instead of ER, it's RE.
Right. You got to do the RE. And so you congratulate yourself for going, and then you have to like it. Because you just spent all this time doing this other than watching YouTube, which is what you'd rather be doing, right? Or can I say Rumble is the new thing? But whatever. You have to
Free
say
speech, man.
Liked it, right? Come on. You have to say, well, YouTube just pulled that Rogan episode off. What did you think of that?
Oh, which
you pulled the Joe Rogan, Dr. Robert Malone. That's no longer on YouTube.
Yeah, I think
thought that was interesting.
I definitely wish YouTube wouldn't pull stuff down. I haven't watched the episode, so I don't know what what was said necessarily. But I think I tweeted this the other day. I said, I have never taken COVID health advice from Joe Rogan. I said, but I have taken it from a lot of mainstream media pundits and their scientists who prove to be selling me a lot of bullshit and stuff that doesn't work. So it's like, what punishment do we have for those fuckers,
Or like the one where Joe Biden said that if you take the vaccine, you won't get COVID.
Right.
Where's his misinformation label smacked on that stuff, or like any of it, the flip-flopping, the back and forth, it makes it really, either they want us to be so confused that we just do what they say, or they don't realize that they're going to make themselves sound so confusing and ineffectual that we're just going to say no to everything that they recommend anyway. Which, I mean, arguably, I've been at that point for some time. I was probably going to get there sooner than a lot of other people, not as soon as some of my other friends, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it seems to have been theater, if you will.
Theater. It was the theater for the sophisticated intellectuals. Theater for the coastal elites to wear their masks and eat their ice cream.
Wear your cloth mask.
We're all racists. Yeah,
right.
That's what it's all about.
You're
racist for not wearing a mask. That's racist.
Oh man. I wanted to just tell you about my wife is a dancer. She's a trained dancer, and she took me once to a dance performance that I know she regrets. She so regrets doing this to herself. It was like it's this dance company from Japan, and they're amazing. That's like how I guess she
Of course.
sold it to me. They're
Of course
amazing.
they're amazing.
And a lot of them are very old guys, so they're doing like these very slow, methodical dance moves that are I don't doubt that they're amazing. But we're at BAM, and it's
This
so
sounds
dark.
like the Peter Brooks thing I went to.
It might be.
Yeah.
We're at BAM. It's so
Different
dark.
part.
The chair that I'm in is so comfortable. It's so warm there, and I shit you not, the
BAM,
music.
it's hot at BAM. It's
so
hot.
Yeah, and it's almost like embryonic. You know, I feel like I'm
It's like
back
a
in the
hot
womb.
yoga, except just sit there in your chair. Yeah.
And then and I shit you not, the music for like the whole thing is just like this, like, and then I just snoozed. I snoozed, and my wife is so upset with me that she wasted a ticket to see these like legends of dance when she could have brought any of her girlfriends who, you know, would actually appreciate this. But that, you know, hey, that I'm not, at least on that point, I'm not as sophisticated, you know, to be able to appreciate guys moving their bodies really slowly while I'm in a fucking Turkish bathhouse. You know,
Right.
I'm gonna sleep
with incredibly hypnotic music.
Oh my god, man!
They make these lullaby situations, and then they get annoyed when you fall asleep. Do something to keep me awake, people. Do something to keep me awake,
please.
You know, stand on your head, jump around, scream, anything.
Throw something at
somehow. Me. Anything you want.
Smash a watermelon. Let the pieces hit me in the face.
At least the naked people keep you awake because you're like, wait, what? What's going on there?
Yeah. Or like, oh, that person has way too much confidence.
Weird.
Way too much confidence for that body. I've turned.
I respect that. I gotta say, I respect that confidence in a body that shouldn't be. I think that's hot. You know,
I have turned into my wife has brought me to a lot of really incredible dance performances, and I appreciate that too. But I am such a diva when it comes to what I want to see on stage and who I want to see on stage, and I want to see gorgeous bodies. Like I get real.
I used to, yeah.
I got in college. I had like a group of gay friends who were the kind that they were like they were the worst people because anybody who walks by, they were judging and like would have things to say about them. It was really bad. So that's what I turned into. I turned into like the really like bitchy gay guy who's like, how fucking dare you get in front of me looking like that? And you know,
horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. I'm an awful person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I respect people that walk with confidence, however they're shaped. I appreciate that. But you know, you don't have to be on stage to do it. I will say I used to know this director, Michael Lalande, who has since passed, and I used to work with him in Philadelphia. Terrific director, really interesting guy. And he would, you know, we were talking about people on stage, and he goes, Libby, I don't want to see any ugly people on stage. And I was like, well, you could cast this person, that person. He's like, no, I want the pretty people on the stage and ugly people not on the stage. And he wasn't great looking himself, but I kind of respected that. I was like, that makes sense. If I'm going to be looking at people, they may as well be good to look at.
Yeah.
In some way or, you know, some way or another.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It totally makes sense. And I think a lot of people feel that way too. It's like, you know, I'm not going to see my to see my uncle on stage. No,
this isn't the Big Lebowski. We're not doing that.
We're not doing that. What can you tell us a little bit about the Post Millennial? Like, how did that start, and what do you guys do? And
so, actually, it's interesting because I've been at the Post Millennial. I started writing for them in something like about 3 years ago. Okay. I met a bunch of the guys from Post Millennial at this party that Quillette threw in Toronto in 2019. I had this sort of like cancel experience, and I had a shitty job because I was a theater artist. I had also lost my shitty job. So I had no career. I had no job. I basically had no friends because when you do theater, like those are all your friends. Mm-hmm. And then if you're not, you know, and then like I wasn't doing theater anymore. And so like they weren't my friends anymore either. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go to this Quillette party. It's not really about the Post Millennial. That's really just about me. But whatever. I went to Toronto. I met a bunch of these guys from Post Millennial. I started writing for them. I started doing a lot more writing for Quillette. And they had started, I guess, 2018. The idea was to be a more free speech oriented center right news outlet in Canada. It's a Canadian outlet. As I started coming on and doing a lot more work, we started veering to do a lot more American news. I came on as a senior editor, I guess, like 2 weeks before the pandemic started, basically, like March 1st. I remember I signed my contract while I was at CPAC, which was really exciting. I was like, yay, I have a job now. And then I came on as editor-in-chief, I guess, this past April. So I would say we're a center-right news outlet. We cover Canadian news. We cover American news. We do a lot of culture wars, which is my first personal favorite to do. And as we've grown, and we have this great staff, we have terrific editors. Roberto Wakerell Cruz, our Canadian editor. Mia Cuthell is our American news editor. I'm the EIC, and we have some really terrific writers as well. So yeah, so that's what we do. But it's interesting. Oh, and Andy Nell is with us as well.
Yeah,
He's our I've
had Andy. Andy was on an earlier episode of my podcast a little while back.
He's terrific. So we source stories and we run what we think readers want to see. We've been targeted a lot recently by Antifa and different activists who want to essentially remove conservative outlets from the internet. So they've been coming at us pretty hard, attacking our ad revenue, attacking people that advertise with us, doing like public shame campaigns to say like, oh, you advertise with Post Millennial, we're going to get everyone to hate you if you don't stop advertising with them. And so what do? The advertisers, they don't care. They're just like, oh, well, if we're going to not make money doing this, we're not going to do it anymore. So we had some stuff like that happen. That was a big struggle for us this fall. If you like the Post Millennial, you can go to, I think it's postmillennial.com/donate. You can subscribe. You can read our stories. You can share them around.
I think the thing that I guess, Antifa or the anti-fascists leave out is that when they eventually stop, advertisers from working with you, the next step is to stop advertising altogether. So
that's exactly right.
Because that's part of the system, man.
People don't realize that is actually what's going on. They're trying to attack conservative platforms by targeting the advertisers. And once they're done attacking all the conservative platforms, they're just going to attack the advertisers themselves and say, you shouldn't be advertising at all. The way that you're using ad tech is actually damaging to blah, 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 as though we can't have new technologies and new revenue sources and new ways of doing business, which obviously is where we are now, right? I mean, so much of what we do is just online, is changing the nature of commerce altogether.
Well, how does it?
What's going to happen?
Yeah, how does it work for you guys? Because the Post Millennial is based in Canada, and obviously we know that. I mean, there is no free speech in Canada.
That's correct.
So are you guys like under the rubric, under Canadian laws when it comes to what you're writing, or so what is that like navigating?
So there's really only a couple of areas where we run into trouble in terms of Canadian law. I would actually say there's really only one very specific area where we run into trouble with Canadian law, and it's whenever we discuss transgender individuals or transgender activism or transgender ideology. We have to be very careful because the law in Canada is that you have to use a person's preferred gender stuff, right? So if I was sitting here and I said I was a man and you referred to me as she, like that would be totally illegal under Canadian law. Even if I just changed it right now and said, actually, Lou, I am Liberace instead of Libby and I'm a man and you have to call me he, and you kept calling me she, I'm pretty sure I could sue you under Canadian law for that. So we're very careful with that kind of terminology. It even leads to situations where, and this has been true in the UK as well, where a woman who is testifying against a rapist in court, if that rapist is transgender, or as I would say in Canada, a biological male who identifies as transgender and uses female pronouns. That's what I would say instead of man.
Not very, not brevity. No
Not
brevity right there.
no brevity.
You're hitting your 900 words a lot
right.
quicker.
Just in the trans thing. But that woman would have to refer to that man as she, if that man said. So what was fascinating with Post Millennial was there was this guy, which I can say because we're in the US, there was this guy, Jessica Yanev, who identified as transgender and went after a bunch of women who were immigrants performing, who like did waxing and beauty treatments in their homes. And so he says to them, you're transphobic and, you know, against everything if you don't wax my female testicles.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah. So that was wild. Like reading those articles was wild. Like Jessica Yanev took her case to the Human Rights Tribunal, alleging that beauticians refused to wax her testicles. That was the language that we had to use. Now, in one respect, that's totally insane, right? Because it's a lie. It's obviously a lie. She's not a she if she has testicles, because testicles are part of what, you know, make you a man. Back to the Big Lebowski, you know, like that and a pair of testicles, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes you a man. But yeah, reading the articles that were written in order to comply with Canadian law almost just made the lie that more transparent.
Yeah.
So I've actually started to a certain extent, I find those limitations to be really fascinating, what you can do with them to expose the fact that you are being made to lie is interesting. I mean, is it better? No, free speech is obviously better, but in a sort of like Tolstoyan censorship type of sense, it is intellectually interesting. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the main area that we suffer from. Also in Quebec, they have like a 10 p.m. curfew still. I think it's about to be lifted finally.
Is this for women
COVID.
with testicles? Oh, okay. I thought it was women with
COVID,
testicles
totally
need to be indoors at 10 p.m.
No, that was
can't
just
have
that
you
story.
Can't have you ball carrying ladies out at night.
But there's some other interesting stuff with regard to the whole trans thing in Canada, which is, so they have changed their, because if you say you're a woman, you are one, even if you have the aforementioned testicles. What happens is if you are a woman with testicles who commits a crime, that crime is categorized and classed as a crime committed by a woman. Right. So there are rapes being committed with penises by women. There are, you know, penised women who end up in women's prisons. And then there are women who become pregnant after they have been, you know, raped by women with penises in women's prisons. And this is skewing data. This is skewing crime statistics and data. And now, of course, we're having that in the US. In California, you have a bunch of women's prisons. I think it's almost 300 biological males who identify as transgender who have requested transfer into women's prisons, to the extent where in women's prisons in California now, condoms are made available, even though sex is against the rules in women's prisons. A couple of women have fallen pregnant in women's prisons after being allegedly, you know, which I have to say allegedly because that's journalism, right? After being like allegedly raped in these prisons by men who are claiming to be women. In a lot of cases, you know, it would be hard to imagine that you could be a dude and be in a men's prison and not be like, oh, if I just say I'm a woman, I don't have to take I don't have to take estrogen. I don't have to suppress my testosterone. I don't have to cut my dick off. I don't have to do anything. I just say I feel like I'm a girl, and then I get to go into the ladies' prison. I would do that, right? I mean, if I were a bad guy, I would like just add that to the list of bad guy things that I was doing, right? Like now I'm going to do this. Women's maximum security prisons are way less secure than men's maximum security prisons. There's a lot, it's a lot more of a calm environment in a women's prison than it is in a men's prison. I think so the requests, I think, have been almost 300. And I think there's been almost 50 transfers of men into women's prisons happening in Washington State, happens in Illinois. Biden administration has said that they think this should be happening at all federal prisons. Tom Cotton this week introduced a bill to prohibit men from being housed in women's prisons. This has to, it's probably not going to pass. You know, I wonder if it's even going to get a hearing, because gender identity has now been conflated with biological sex. And they're rewriting that essentially with all of the new legislation. They're rewriting that into the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
I remember.
Where it doesn't belong at all. And the Supreme Court recently did that with what's her name, the funeral home man who dressed like a woman and wanted to be a woman and got fired for it. I forget what that case was. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that case, but I remember, you know, not even that long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, when we would have these conversations about this subject, it was very clear. It was like, no, hold on a second. There's sex and there's gender. Okay, there's biological sex and then there's gender, and then pretty soon then they just start all blending together. Recently, I've read a number of pieces, basically trying to shame lesbians for not sleeping with penised women, right?
Yeah.
And I hear that, and I'm like, that is such a dude move. Just trying, like saying like, oh, come on, what are you, a fucking bigot?
Right.
You don't want to suck my female dick? What are you, a bigot?
I'm sorry, it's girl dick.
You don't want to suck my girl dick?
Yeah, that's the term. That's the phrase. Yeah. There have been reports from lesbians in the UK who said that they go on to like lesbian dating apps, and it's all these guys like wearing little outfits going like, oh, don't you want it? It's like this weird fetish thing. And this is not to say that this kind of gender, like that actual gender dysphoria doesn't exist. It does. There's obviously people, and this has been true, I think, throughout history. There's been people who choose to live as the opposite sex. There were eunuchs, there's like, this happens periodically, but certainly not with the same kind of social force and legislative activity that we have now. And the truth is that nobody wants to talk about is people who, like men who chose to dress and live as women, who would go into women's bathrooms to use the facilities 20 years ago, right? Women didn't say anything about that. Everyone was, like, oh, you're this person, you're going to do your thing, right? Go ahead. Like, that's your thing to do. But that's not what's going on here, right? This is like a whole ideological push to remake society in the image of basically, a transhumanist idea where human beings are no longer male and female, but are, intentionally evolved.
I am so happy.
Else.
I'm so happy you brought up transhumans, because I had this written down. You see transhumanism right there, because I wanted, you see it? Right,
look at that. Yeah.
Because I remember a few years ago, you wrote in the Federalist, I believe, about transhumanism and your beef with it. And I used to have a joke where I was like, oh man, transhumanists are gross. Like, oh, you want to become a robot? Ew. And it's like no, transgender people are cool. Transhumanists, get the
It's really all part of the same thing. And the first piece I wrote on transhumanism was in Quillette, and it led directly to the end. Yeah, it led directly to the end of my theater career. So who knew that would happen?
The theater scene in these singularity is going to be fantastic. Everyone's going to be going to theater.
But basically, people said that I was saying that transgender people are just weird robot people, and of course, I wasn't saying that at all. What I was saying was that transgender ideology, along with a couple of other things that are making waves in Western culture, including Elon Musk's Neuralink, like AI, human integration, including concepts of body hacking, these kinds of things. These are basically ideas that answer the Cartesian question of the mind-body split and say, like, yes, human beings can be just their minds. Human beings can be just their bodies. The two things don't have anything to do with one another. And I think that that's totally bogus. Human beings are a mind-body combination that cannot really be disrupted and still be human. But if you look at the foundations of transhumanism, you have like Martine Rothblatt, who is a transgender person, who's one of the richest, very wealthy. I don't know, one of the richest what, I don't know, but very wealthy technology entrepreneur person, who's been pushing a lot of this stuff. And I think that the concern is that we let go of our humanity before we even really know what it is, and without valuing that which makes us human. Perhaps that's something that human beings want to do, right? Maybe we want to be so integrated with our technology that you can't tell the difference between a human being and the tech that they use to do whatever it is in their lives, right? Like maybe we want our phones to just be like our hands and not actually phones. It would be convenient, but would it be human? Maybe not. And I think a lot of this is in service to an idea of, eradicating more what it means to be a human being and separating us from, in a lot of ways, our bodies and our earthly selves. That sounds kind of crazy, but I think it's under there. I think it's in there.
I years back, I was in Los Angeles and I drove all north to Piedmont, California, which is like Piedmont. It's right next to Oakland. And I went there because I wanted to cover, I wanted to write about a conference there. I think it was called Eros Evolving. And it was like a transhumanist. It was a transhumanist conference. So, you had a lot of, talks about what sex would be like after the singularity. And another thing I noticed when I was looking around the room is that a lot of the people were kind of on the older side. And I'm like, oh man, if the singularity does hit, none of these people are going to live to be able to upload themselves to it,
Right.
Yeah. But let's see, I have a baby crying right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but that might
hear it.
You can hear him? You can hear him?
I can hear it.
That might be our time to go. Well, look,
Okay.
I just want to recap everything we talked about. We talked a lot of theater. We talked trans issues, both transgender and transhumanist. And we talked about literature. And I had fun. I hope you had fun, Libby.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, Lou.
Cool. And one more time, where everyone can find your stuff.
I'm at the Post Millennial and on Twitter at Libby Emmons. I'm also on Getter now at Libby Emmons as well.
We all are.
Aren't we all?
That's
us and Joe Rogan. We're all out there on.
That's where the transhumanists are going.
Liberty. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. Again, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review. That would be lovely. Keep your eye out for my book, my forthcoming book. That joke isn't funny anymore. And please sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And if you want to support my work, join the Lou Perez community on Locals. That's thelouperez.locals.com. You'll get access to all my stuff before anybody else, as well as exclusive content, and of course, me. Be sure to support my sponsors, palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code LOU for 25% off purchases over $75, and Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com, promo code LOU for free shipping. Okay, I'm going to keep that in.